Hey everybody, this is James from All Hail Internal Combustion. I said on my last video that I was going to do one on brake lines. So, this is the brake line video special. This is NyCop. I pretty much use NyCop on all my brake line work now because it's, I don't know if it's relatively new, but I've only known about it for maybe the past 7 years or so, so I've been using it on everything because it's easy to work with, it's easy to cut, it's easy to flare, and it's very easy to bend. Let's knock one thing right off the table from the get-go. Regular copper. Don't use regular copper in your brake system. The reason is regular copper has about the same burst strength that NyCop does. We're not really worried about blowing a line the first time we press on the pedal. What happens with copper is after you put it under extreme pressure a whole lot of times, it'll expand and contract, not to the point where you would really notice it, but after a lot of expansion and contraction in certain parts, it'll create a weak spot and it'll harden. And what happens is after a while you go to do that one panic stop, and the hardened spot will split open and you'll lose all your fluid out of that spot. If you've got a dual reservoir master cylinder, you're okay because you still got part of your system left. But if you're running an old single cylinder, like pre-1968 on your car, once a line breaks, you're pretty much done and you better be looking for that emergency brake real quick. So that's one thing with copper. And copper also gets brittle when it gets shaken around a lot faster than NyCop will. So it doesn't like vibration, and it's not very good at actual abrasion. So if it's rubbing against something, it'll tend to wear through quicker than NyCop will. So that's why copper is off the table. So with our NyCop, naturally it's a nickel-copper mixture. Makes it corrosion resistant, makes it a little harder than copper, but like I said, it's still really great to work with. These are some of my mistakes when I was doing the El Camino, and like I said in my last video, mistakes were made, and yeah, I made quite a few. So what I want to talk about is like actually working with NyCop. This is a piece of 1/4 inch line. And as you can see, I can bend it relatively easy. Don't gorilla it because you'll just straight up kink it. You got to work it real slow. And work around in different areas. And as you can see, you can get bends in it. You can also use bending tools. I've had some of these for a very long time. I use this one. This is another one. I don't really like it because it doesn't come up far enough on the tubing. This tends to kink it. I usually use this on steel lines. This is one from back when I did HVAC. It's for your thicker. This is actually for copper. But I've used it on steel lines before. And you can use other things to bend your lines on. This is actually what I use to bend the lines on the El Camino because I needed to make some swirls to go up to the master cylinder. And as long as you take your time and you work it and you're pretty slow with it and you don't hang around in one spot too long, you can get some pretty nice bends just by using something for a mandrel. That's how long it took to make a little U-bend there. None of it's kinked. So, fine stuff. Just, you got to realize the smaller that you go with what you're bending around, the more likely you are to kink it. So, try and find something decent. Experiment with a little piece of NyCop if you've got it around. I know this stuff isn't exactly free, but sometimes you just got to experiment. If you'll take a look at this line right here, it's got a bunch of chew marks in it. Because what I was trying to do is I was trying to bend this with my bending pliers, which are these guys right here. These are Harbor Freight Specials. And they do tend to work good But it's another one of them things that you've got to move around, and every time you do a bend on this, because of the way the tools are, it puts a little rib in where it's holding against. I could probably go in here and clean these up with a file and make them a lot better, or just get a better pair, because I've had these for probably 10 years. So that's about bending. Let me get these out of the way. And get this out of the way, and now we're going to talk about flaring. Take a piece of 1/4-inch line to experiment with the flaring. Now, there's a lot of flaring tools out there. I bought this one a few years back. It only does 3/16 line, which is its drawback. It was like $35, but this is like the best flaring tool that I have. This works great on NyCop and steel. And we'll go through using that, but I want to show you a little bit about flaring. This is another kit that you can get from Harbor Freight that isn't that expensive, and it actually does a pretty decent job on NyCop. So what you would do is you take your holder, figure out what size you got. This is 1/4-inch line, so I'm going to run my 1/4-inch line up in the holder. Then you'll find your anvil, which is marked 1/4 inch. And what you want to do is you want to put your line through so it's even with your anvil. So now I'm going to lock this down. And I like to make sure it's tight, because I have had like steel line loosen up and try and push itself out, so now I just tighten everything. And what we're going to do now is you put your anvil in there upside down. This is the only time you use this place, and what this is going to do, this is going to give me a bubble flare, which is half the process. So we'll go ahead and we'll open this up. Slip it over top, and you want to rotate it to how you're going to be putting pressure on it. Hold on to it real good and spin it on down. And what this is doing is basically forming a bubble at the end of your line. So we can go ahead and take this off now and show you what we got. Take that back off, and I usually find this thing gets stuck. Give it a tap, it'll come out. And this would be called a bubble flare. And bubble flares actually have been used in cars. A lot of your older European stuff, not the prettiest in the world, but that would be a bubble flare. But a lot of your European stuff, very little of the Japanese, and I think Volkswagen used this style for a while too. So what you would do is, like, first you would naturally put your nut on there, and I'll grab one just for a reference. Now if you have a vehicle that has the bubble flare on it instead of the double flare, your fitting is going to be a little bit different too. Your fitting's not going to be coned on the inside, it'll be flat across. So if you're doing bubble flare brake lines, you need different fittings. But that would go on there, and then you would tighten your brake line in. Now what we use is a double flare. That's how American cars are set up. And we're going to put this back down in here and lock it down one more time. And then we'll take our tool without our anvil, and it's got a coned end on this tool. So we run that down, and this becomes a double flare because we're folding the material down over top of itself. Take this back out. Alright, so that is our double flare. And this is what we're pretty much running on all of our American cars. And your nut would go down on there. Then you would tighten it into your fitting, master cylinder, wherever you're going. So that's the proper way to do a double flare with this basic tool. So let me get this out of the way, and I'll show you this other tool, which is really cool, really simple, really easy. We'll discuss this part in a second. When you start out with this tool, you want to take this nut. This is your stop nut for measuring out how much brake line you're going to be setting into the tool itself. So we'll unbend our piece of NyCop. We're going to feed that into our tool. We're going to tighten down these two 10mm nuts. Usually when I'm doing this crap, I just have one adjustable sitting around so I'm not juggling tools. And once again, you want these to be tight so that the brake line does not move inside the tool and actually strip the brake line out. Once again, remember to put your nut on before you do this. Now we can take our stop nut out. And this tool has two parts on it. There's the indented side. This is operation number 1. This puts your bubble flare on your line. Then we're going to flip over to number 2, which is the pointy bit. And that does operation number 2, and that actually creates your double flare. So you got the belly button, and then you got the boob. I hope I'm not being sexist by saying that, but that's just the easiest way to do the analogy there. So we'll start out, and the tool is even marked operation 1 and operation 2, so it doesn't get confusing. Put your operation 1 in there, grab your wrench, and spin it on in. You can put some lubrication on here if you want to, but with NyCop I've never really felt the need to. So inside of here will be a nice little bubble flare. Now we're going to turn it into a double flare. Put the tool back in, and we're going to run it down again. Pull that out. And we can go ahead and release our line out of here. And there's a lot of companies that make these particular tools. This one's a Titan that I picked up off of Amazon. But like Eastwood and a few other companies make one, you basically clamp it in your bench vise. And it'll do 3/16, quarter, and I believe 3/8 line. And it's really, really easy to use, but I couldn't justify the price of one at the time. And at that time, I think Eastwood was pretty much the only game in town for those. So that is a nice finished double flare that would go into where you need it to go. Make sure you have a good cutter, not the cheapy dollar store ones. I've had this thing for probably 20 years and I haven't broken it yet. But this is my go-to little baby cutter. I've got bigger sizes for bigger lines. But that's something else you're going to need. You're going to start playing around with brake lines. And get yourself a good set of line wrenches. You just want to remember with your line wrenches, try and keep some thickness here because it adds strength. I mean, you're dealing with an open wrench here. You don't want it to split out. I've got some really cheap ones in there that I keep around for emergencies. They tend to open up. This is a older Craftsman. These are good, but I don't have these in metric. That's why I got the cheapy ones in there. And another thing you keep on hand is a supply of fittings. As you can see, I've got a fair amount of fittings in there. And when I buy new kits of NyCop, I always try to buy the ones that come with fittings. This comes with a bunch of fittings in it. It also comes with unions or couplers, whatever way you want to call them. Now you can make splices and brake lines, but you have to use the right connection. These right here have seats on the inside of them. Trying to get this turned the right way. There you go. So that would coincide with our double flare that we just put on our line. So that would sit down in there and seal. Now you're getting a seal from both ends mechanically. These are what you want to use on brake lines because they won't fail. Never use a compression style union or fitting on there because they will let go. They're made out of brass, and brass is pretty soft, and if you put it under too much pressure, it's going to let go on you. Let's see, was there anything else I wanted to cover? I think that's about it as far as brake lines go. If you can get yourself some tools and get yourself some NyCop and experiment. You know, all of us working on older cars, the brake systems are starting to get really old, and if you live up like in the Northeast or in the Rust Belt, you'll be constantly doing brake lines on one thing or another. I paid, I think it was $28 for 25 feet of 3/16. I think it was like $35 for 25 feet a 1/4 inch. 3/8 inch gets a little salty. It's like $65, $70 for 25 feet of it. But as far as running fuel lines, I still stick to steel on that because 3/16 is easy to work with. It's kind of easy to bend. You can use couplers in that too. And when you're doing fuel line and light hydraulic line, like the return line on your power steering pump, that only needs to be single flared. So you can do the basic operation that we just did with this guy and put a single flare in those lines and have them seal up and be just fine. I guess that'll be it for the brake line video. Do some research, get some tools, look around, start doing it. You'd be surprised how much this comes in handy to have this skill set under your belt, because you could do it for yourself, you could do it for other people, and one way to fund your projects is by fixing other people's projects. So that'll be all for me this time. It's James from All Hail Internal Combustion. I'll see you on the next time, and we will probably be getting back to the El Camino. See ya. Thanks for liking, watching, subscribing, sharing, all that happy crap. Have a good one.